And that's what.
'Cause I just wanna hold you all night long. Mhm. 'Cause I love you. Been love for 1 minute and 40 seconds.
Right? Remember, he was indicted last year on a significant number of charges, including racketeering, sex trafficking, transporting individuals for prostitution. Judge Ann Subramarian and the prosecution and the defense all, of course, made it clear during jury selection today what the stakes were. It was again, a huge day. There were a couple of
Hey,
times
Travis.
that Diddy actually turned down a plea bargain from prosecutors as recently as Friday.
I
150
turned the plea
potential
down.
jurors were questioned to determine their qualification to serve. Four accusers, including R&B singer Cassie
Hey,
Ventura, are expected
Latasha.
to testify. Cassie has stated that she will use her real name in court. Sean Combs maintains that all sexual encounters were
What's up,
consensual.
Brett?
His legal team argues that he is the target of unfair prosecution and racial bias. Opening statements are scheduled for next week, and the trial is expected to last at least 8 weeks. If convicted, Diddy could face life in prison. I want to go to my panel. Dr. Julian Malvo, economist, president emerita, Bennett College, author of Surviving and Thriving 365 Facts in Black Economic History. Joining us from me from D.C., Dr. Omi Congo, being senior professorial lecturer, School of International Service, American University, author of Lies About Black People, How to Combat Racism, out of D.C. Glad to have you. Well, here's the thing here. Julian, when you talk about this, first of all, it's shocking that
I
this
sure
has moved
can't.
this fast. I mean, I know some other folks who have been indicted on lesser charges, and it's taken them 2 to 3
So he
years to
didn't
get to
turn
court.
down the plea. Hold on, y'all. He turned down the plea that they gave him. Thank you for the hearts, whoever doing that. I appreciate you. And whoever ever
At the
hit
same
that
time,
thumbs up
he
button.
has
Thank
been
you.
incarcerated all these months, and I think that puts some pressure on to move this quickly. Um, but to be honest with you, Roland, I hate to say I don't care. I do care, but it's not number with the idiot in
Thanks for
the
those
house that
hearts.
enslaved people built. This is not number one on my list of priorities. I feel badly for the brother, but it seems like he did a whole lot of dirt.
I'm
And
about to say it.
hey, let the chips fall where
I'm
they
about to
may.
say it
Well,
right
that's not a
now.
question on McCongo was number one on the list. I mean, the reality is, even
Listen
with
to listen to
Trump
me
in the
say your
White
name.
House, I mean, life still goes on. There are going to be trials, there are going to be arrests, there are going to be all sorts of different things going on. And the reality is, this is a huge story. You're talking about one of the most impactful figures in hip hop music in the last 25 plus years, not just music, but also in fashion and so many different areas. Sean Combs impacted the careers of a lot of people. This is a major, major trial. This is huge, and it's important for the country. It's important for the rule of law and all of that stuff, of course. But it's really important for our community. This is, coming after the R. Kelly trial. This is another opportunity for people in our community
who have done terrible things against members of our community, particularly Black women and young Black women, young Black men and boys, possibly boys as well. I don't know. We'll find out with this trial. Who have done terrible things by our community and have been allowed to get a pass, literally rolling for decades. We blasted their music. They rose to the top of society, soundtracks and deals, Pepsi, commercial deals, all of these things. Diddy was on top of all of that. He was the untouchable star.
Jenny!
Sure, he got off of other charges, the gun possession thing, all this other stuff.
We gotta pause it. Jennifer! Hey, girl! Hey, girl, I miss you. She said, hey, sister love, sorry I haven't been on yet. Y'all still here?
I think there's a lot of other guys in the industry who are probably shaking in their boots.
Somebody tell me. Jennifer, I had a phone call. My mom is still in the hospital, and I was on the phone talking to her. If you still here. Jenny said I got a phone. Praise the Lord, honey. If she gone, we'll see her when she get back. Let's watch the case. I'm so happy to see her, y'all. I'm sorry. I had to stop it.
Now, as this trial's getting to start, but we need to use this as a moment for us who are in hip-hop, who are quote-unquote elders in hip-hop, to make sure that we're using this as an example to take control of this industry, to make sure that we're setting an example for future generations of artists as well as listeners of hip-hop to know that they'll be protected and respected. Maybe not so much in the lyrics. Hopefully that can change too, but at least in these physical spaces, because so much has gone on in our community. I was listening to LL Cool J's Big Ol' Butt came on the other day, and like the second verse of that is about him picking up girls at a high school, right? You listen to BBD, Do Me, the backstage, underage, adolescent, how you doing? Like, there's been so many things that were normalized as part of the culture as it relates to being involved with young people, but then Diddy took it to a higher level with everything that he's accused of in terms of physical abuse, Cassie, and all these other issues. So this could be a great reckoning for us in hip-hop, and we all should pay attention.
This is the New York Times story here. It said many of the potential jurors said they had been exposed to the case on television, at the gym, through water cooler talk among co-workers, via a comedian making jokes on Instagram. That exposure was not necessarily disqualifying, as long as the potential jurors, who are not being identified by name, said they could decide the case based only on the evidence they saw in court. Quote, you understand that Mr. Combs is presumed innocent.
Great, say hello, my sister love. What's up, brother?
Who said she had heard
so far, let me tell you what's going on.
Since the 1990s.
So far, Cassie is going to use her real name because it's a federal trial, and they could change the names on the trial. Cassie is going to use her real name. I don't see how that can go because of her using her real name, no problem. But I thought that she was paid off to do, what she done, from what he did to her. I thought that she got all that money for, that was it. Then they saying that he had a plea deal and he already have, thank you for the 3 thumbs up, y'all. They say he had a plea deal. He already done turned it down. So they pulling the jury and they doing all of that right there, y'all. So it's getting ready to begin. I'm going to go to Law and Crime real quick and see what they talking about. This Law and Crime right here. I hate that it's a federal trial because we ain't gonna be able to see it. We ain't gonna be able to be inside. That's the only thing.
With 28 non-stop flights from ILM,
I thought she couldn't testify. That's what I thought, Greg. I thought that
Day
too.
one of jury selection of the criminal trial of Sean P. Diddy Combs has begun. We learned about potential celebrities who might be mentioned at this trial, a theft of a wand at the Harry Potter store, Combs apparently admitting he's nervous, and whether or not we can actually get an impartial jury to hear this monumental case. This is a full recap of the day and what you might have missed in court. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Hey everybody, this is another Law and Crime legal alert. So lawsuits allege that antacid use has been linked to increases in stomach cancer and gastric cancer. Yeah, so if you or a loved one have been diagnosed with stomach cancer or gastric
Don't
cancer,
pay
after
him. I mean, you
using
can pay us
antacid,
some mind, but he
you
get ready to
qualify
go off
for
the screen.
compensation. One of our legal sponsors is partnering with the Driscoll Law Firm. This is a national firm helping those injured to ensure their claims are thoroughly presented. Visit antacidclaims.com/sidebar.
Okay, let us go to the trial.
To answer less than 10 questions and check your eligibility to file a claim. It's official. We're here. The start of United States versus
Yeah, he gave her
Sean P.
$50 billion.
What began with his arrest in September of 2024, an indictment on federal sex crimes charges, now brings us to May 5th, 2025, the start of his trial, the start of jury selection, to be more precise. Can't believe we're here. I've said it before, I've said it again. The idea of this going to trial in under a year from his arrest and indictment at the federal level, very, very rare. He has been speeding his way towards trial once his day in court, and now we are here. So this case has changed a lot too since September, by the way. Over the last several months, his indictment has been amended. We're now at his third superseding indictment, where he's facing 5 counts. Count 1, racketeering conspiracy. So that's that Combs and others allegedly created a criminal enterprise using the resources and personnel of his multifaceted business empire, where he allegedly abused, threatened, and coerced women to fulfill his sexual desires, including engaging in prolonged or extensive or elaborate sexual performances, sometimes known as freak-offs, that included sex workers. They're the underlying predicate acts that need to be proved, at least 2 need to be proved, in order to get the racketeering charge, these underlying crimes that make
What's
up
up,
the
Josh?
larger pattern of criminal racketeering activity. So whether that be kidnapping,
What's up,
forced
brother?
labor, arson, sex trafficking. And speaking of which, counts 2 and 4 are sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion of victims 1 and 2. Namely, that Combs intentionally harbored, transported, enticed these alleged victims to cause them to engage in commercial sex acts using force, fraud, or coercion. Commercial sex acts meaning something of value was exchanged or promised. Counts 3 and 5, transportation to engage in prostitution, namely that Combs allegedly transported victims and commercial sex workers for purposes of sex work, for purposes of prostitution. And now we need a panel of 12 jurors with potentially 6 alternates to sit and hear this case in Manhattan federal court. And it's being reported that 150 potential jurors are being brought in. So what did day 1 of jury selection look like in Sean Combs' criminal case? Well, since there are no cameras allowed in federal court, we have with us our very own eyes and ears about what happened in that courtroom today.
Yeah, we will see what
Law and
happens.
Crimes reporter Elizabeth Milner was there. Elizabeth, so good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jesse.
So I'm going to start with the question I always ask you. How did Diddy look? What was he wearing? And who was with him?
Well, today was a lot different, obviously, because it's day 1 of jury selection, or to some, they consider it day 1 of the trial. So Diddy looked completely different from his pretrial hearing. In that he wasn't wearing the standard issue khaki tan jumpsuit provided by MDC. Instead, he looked a lot different. And as you know from the last judge's order that was made last week, Diddy is allowed to wear normal attire, but he looked a little similar to what I kind of presumed to be a choir boy. So he came in with a blue pullover sweater. He had a white collared shirt. He had navy slacks. Couldn't get a look at his shoes, but of course we know from the judge's order that he is not allowed to have laces on those shoes. So it's unclear if he had just shoes with no laces, wearing loafers. Couldn't see from where I was inside the gallery, because I was even lucky to get inside that courtroom today, because let me tell you, Jesse, it is inundated with so much press from honestly around the world. This is not just a nationwide case. There are international outlets out here as well too, trying to get inside that courtroom, trying to get a peek at Diddy. And I thankfully was one of the lucky few to get inside, because I think they were only allowing about 10 or 15 people from the press, because the rest had to be filled with a lot of.
Oh, wow.
Agency helped me simplify my skincare regime.
Let's get this commercial out of here, y'all.
Cleanser, and use the Holy Grail tretinoin.
Great work, everybody.
Man, I just knew that commercial was gone.
Let's go over the middle section.
Prospective jurors. So the side where normally the defense's side sits, or normally the family sits, instead that entire side was empty, at least for the first half of court today, mainly because we had to put in all those jurors, and I know we're going to talk about that more in a second. But as far as Diddy goes today, his demeanor seemed upbeat at first, but then there was a moment, I think it was a little bit before the lunch break, where Diddy kept having to go, take some restroom breaks in between the prospective jurors' questions and that type of sort. And then he uttered something that I found to be pretty astounding given how confident and upbeat he appeared. He said, "Your Honor, I'm a little nervous," which is something that finally you kind of see the mask slip off a little bit, where it's like Diddy is finally admitting the weight is kind of coming on to him as far as having to go to trial for these federal charges that he's facing. And of course, that being 5 federal charges that he's facing, which could carry, if he is sentenced or if he is convicted on these charges, could carry, decades in prison. So it's a lot of weight on his shoulders. And we've kind of presumed that as well, too, because obviously, since he's been incarcerated, his hair has been great. He did come in today. His face wasn't completely shaven, so his goatee was a little white as well, too. But when he had first come into the courtroom, he did what he usually does. He hugged all of his attorneys. He looked outside, or he looked into the gallery to see who was there as far as family goes. Unfortunately, no immediate family was inside the courtroom today. But again, we have 2 more months to go at trial, so it's likely
Wow, why they weren't there?
Statements, but that's unclear as far as what family members will be there at what times, that type of sort. But as far as today inside the courtroom, it was really that associate or member of his entourage who again was wearing that free puff hat, that free puff sweatshirt, but instead he had to flip it inside out, as we probably presume, because those prospective jurors are going to be coming into that same courtroom where we're sitting as the press, where his associates are sitting. So he had to turn that shirt inside out. And what I did also spot was Justin Combs' brother inside the courtroom too. Now with Justin Combs' brother, we have to remember that he is not Diddy's son. However, it's somebody who has been very, who Diddy is obviously very familiar with, that being his son's other brother from a different relationship, because it's a tangled family web as far as everything goes with the family and everything like that. But while Justin Combs wasn't inside the courtroom, his brother was, and I think Diddy kind of looked at both of those two associates and then Justin Combs' brother kind of as support, kind of as like a nice presence to be inside the courtroom, because I do think he relies a lot on the support of his family and of his loved ones to be inside that courtroom. But again, we still have 2 more months of trial, so I assume, his mother, his daughter, maybe possibly his daughters, but at least bare minimum, his sons will be inside that courtroom. If they'll be there every day, that's a wait and see, but I'm sure for opening statements, they definitely will be.
And I gotta say, I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
that
the
he mentioned
stepson
he's
was
nervous.
there. Where in the world was his son
It's
at?
not only decades, he could potentially face life in prison if he's convicted of the most serious charge. And look, his defense team was pushing forward to get this in front of the jury as soon as possible. It seems they feel confident in getting an acquittal here, or putting the prosecution's feet to the fire. I want to move on to a little bit about what happened today. You and I had spoken earlier today about who was there for him. Attorneys there for him. Mark Garagos now there is in a more of a consultant role. So you have the attorneys, you have the prosecutors in court. I want to talk about the jury. Okay, so it's my understanding that prospective jurors came in last week. They filled out these questionnaires. And based on their responses, that number is going to be ultimately whittled down to the jurors who were selected in this case. So first, before we even get into the ins and outs of what jurors said in court, jurors were asked in their questionnaires, because that became a big focus of what their responses were. So, and I know, and by the way, just to let everybody know, a little while ago, the court actually released preliminary instructions in this case, and some of those questions too, and maybe we'll put it up. But Elizabeth, you give us a general brief idea about what were some of the questions they were asked.
Well, some of the questions included just people and places, whether or not there was a whole like laundry list of celebrities, and whether or not these prospective jurors were familiar with them. You know, they range from Kanye West to Michael B. Jordan to Young Miami to Dallas Austin, who's a music producer, to Harv Pierre, who actually was named as one of the defendants in one of Diddy's civil suits. And so prospective jurors were asked who they knew, and most of them were very honest about their answering. They were like, you know what, I don't know them personally, but I do recognize, for example, Michael B. Jordan from movies. Obviously, Sinners is very popular right now, so of course that is probably going to be the name most were able
What
to
did he
answer
do,
yes or no
Greg?
to. But I was kind of surprised at
What
how
did
many
Michael
people didn't
P.
know
Jordan
of
do?
these,
What did
laundry
he
list of
got to
popular
do with
celebrities,
this?
especially when you have names like Kanye West on there, especially when you have names like, you know, Michael B. Jordan, that type of sort. But there were some prospective jurors.
What did Michael B. Jordan got to do with this? Am I lost? Am I missing something? Now they don't make me skip a commercial and they give me another one, damn it.
Did not, or who were not familiar with these certain people. Now, as far as places goes, I don't know the full extent of what was asked as far as places goes. There was this one juror who did kind of talk about a hotel, the Essex House Hotel, that was on the list of places that prospective jurors were asked about. And this juror in particular, he just said, you know, he had worked at this particular hotel sometime last year and all of that sort. Now, as far as some of the other questions that were asked, you know, they were asked simple questions as far as, do you know any additional information about this case? Do you have any training in addictive treatment, domestic violence, sexual abuse? Do you have any views about prosecutors or law enforcement? Have you been involved in legal issues such as a lawsuit, such as a criminal case? Have you been a victim of a crime? Do you have feelings about law enforcement, hip-hop artists, witnesses testifying under immunity, witnesses also testifying under a pseudonym? And is there any reason that you wouldn't be able to serve as a prospective juror? Now, some of these questions, especially when it comes to like legal issues, criminal issues, surprisingly, a lot of people were very forthcoming, whether it be that they were in a DUI accident, that being that they were the victim of a DUI accident. One woman had talked about how she stole a wand from Harry Potter World.
Yeah.
A lot of these jurors have been very transparent as far as being honest about some of the legal issues that they've dealt with in their past.
But I definitely want to get into all that for sure. And by the way, just before I get into a little bit more of the celebrity aspect, so I understand the judge came in, brought the jurors in, read them preliminary instructions, and just so everybody knows what we're dealing with, I'm reading from this document that was released. You know, don't do any research on this case. Don't discuss your questions and answers of the case with anyone or until further instructed by the court. But listen to the schedule. Potential jurors will be called back for further questioning and jury selection from Monday, May 5th through Friday, May 9th.
Wait.
Availability during that week will be
Don't
required.
research this
Trial will
shit.
commence
Let
on
me tell you
Monday, May
something.
12th, 2025.
How are you going to tell people to don't research this when they put that Cassie video out of him beating her in the hallway? These jurors have all seen and have their own opinion, so the trial definitely will not be fair. People need to know that Diddy is not on trial for Cassie. Cassie got $50 million for getting her ass whatever he did to her ass, and he know better than that. She done got her money. Cassie is a witness to the crimes that they're saying allegedly that he done. So by them seeing that video with him and Cassie, that's a domestic violence. That's domestic violence. Domestic violence is happening every day. Everybody had probably been in some type of domestic violence, whether if it was physical, mental, or whatever. You don't go to prison for life for domestic violence, not unless you have unalived someone. So, a domestic violence case, if you in domestic violence, you go to jail for 72 hours. You get a bond, you get a restraining order, it's over with and done with. So, this man, P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, and I'm not a Puff Daddy fan, and I'm not a whoever fan, I'm not none of that. I'm literally here just to speak my piece. He will not have a fair trial. To say all of that, to say that. He will not get a fair trial because everybody have seen that video, and he's not on trial for domestic violence with Cassie. So I don't know if this is going to be fair. This trial probably needs to be tried in Africa some damn where they don't know what's going on, or Egypt, somewhere. It needs to be tried somewhere besides here. Okay? Because it's not going to be fair. You're innocent until proven guilty. I don't give a damn what you done, but you're innocent until proven guilty. And if you don't agree with that, then you're definitely on the wrong channel, because everybody is treated fair over here. Okay? And that's just it.
Expected to last about 8 weeks. And generally, trial will be held 5 days per week, Monday through Friday. During the first week of trial, Monday, May 12th, 2025, through Friday, May 16th, 2025, trial will be held from 9:30 a.m. until 5 p.m. After the first week, trial will be held from 9:30 a.m. until 3 p.m. Trial will not be held on Friday, May 23rd, Monday, May 26th, Thursday, June 19th, Friday, July 4th. These are all the holidays. But going back to the celebrities for a second, I found it very interesting that the jurors were asked, you know, is there anybody on this list that you know? Michael B. Jordan, Kid Cudi, who you and I both know, became a component in Cassie Ventura's lawsuit. We believe Cassie's going to be a part of this case, probably victim one. The allegation is that she had a romantic relationship with him, that Sean Combs may have blown up his car at one point. I didn't know what the connection of Mike Myers, the actor, I didn't know what the connection Michael B. Jordan might be. Kanye West, I mean, as far as I know, Elizabeth, Kanye West had been, talking to Sean Combs in jail, maybe called him up. I'm surprised by some of these names. And also, I mean, if you have any more context about what their connection could be to the discussion
Thank you for the
about the case.
thumbs up.
But is it my understanding that Kim Porter, his ex, Sean Combs' ex, the mother of his children, some of his children, and who died several years ago, she may play a role in this case as well?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring up now Michael Myers, not 100% sure as far as what his kind of connection is and why his name was even on that list. But as far as Michael B. Jordan, I thought about it for a second, and it kind of makes sense possibly why Michael B. Jordan. And that's that they kind of share a common ex, him, Sean Combs, and Michael B. Jordan. That's Lori Harvey. Now, Lori Harvey dated Sean Combs for a brief period a few years ago. And then as we know, or maybe as people know from Instagram, Michael B. Jordan and Lori Harvey went on to have like a years-long relationship after the fact. Now that's as far as I know is probably what the connection would be as to why Michael B. Jordan specifically was on that list. But there were other famous names on that list as well too. You know, you had Aubrey O'Day, you had Don Richard, you had, you know, I go back to like faces like, or names like Har Pierre, who used to be president of Bad Boy Records. And as far as Kim Porter specifically, now she was brought up when one of these prospective jurors was kind of talking about her role as a chief marketing officer for a local or for a big book publishing company. And I bring that up specifically because apparently there is going to be a memoir that's going to be coming out later this fall. And that memoir is going to be Al B. Shore's memoir. And he is a very important kind of central figure a little bit in Diddy's life. And I say that because he is the biological father of Quincy Brown, who Diddy adopted. Diddy, along with Kim Porter, because Kim Porter is Quincy Brown's biological mother. And that's why I say there's such a tangled web when it comes to the Combs / Al B. Shore family / you know, Justin Combs' family as well too. And so that was kind of the context as
wow. So this is going to be very, very interesting, because they're going to be dropping more names during the trial of different celebrities.
And even Al B. Shore were brought up in that a prospective juror did work at a local or at a publishing company. I think it was Simon and Schuster. And she was talking about how she had viewed a press release about this memoir that's again going to be coming out called Do You Believe Me? And it's pretty interesting too, because the ties of that in a sense are also kind of related to the documentaries. Now this one, I believe it's the Peacock documentary as opposed to the HBO documentary, and that Al B. Shore has made some allegations that have, you know, come from Diddy's team. They have come back and they have said these allegations aren't true when it comes to allegations that somehow, some way Diddy was involved in Kim Porter's death. Now, as far as whether or not this stuff is going to be admitted into trial, that's unclear right now. But it was interesting, kind of the government's point of the case, because they said that they don't really believe that Kim Porter and Al B. Sure will really be mentioned in the trial, whereas the defense, they seem pretty adamant that both of those names will be mentioned in the trial. So again, we still have 2 months. We don't know what all the government has up their sleeves, but it'll be interesting to see kind of how the defense comes and counters that, and how all this information that is brought in, some of these documentaries and these podcasts, because it seems that some of the figures that were in these documentaries, according to the government, will also be testifying as witnesses in this case. So it seems like you're kind of just having a little cross pattern above all boards when it comes to what's going on and how some of these people in Diddy's lives who have appeared on these documentaries will appear inside that courtroom as well too.
So let's go back to the idea of the jurors having a legal history, whether it's criminal history, whether it's filing lawsuits. You got to tell me what you learned. And please, just to reiterate one more time for our audience, because it struck me, you had a potential juror who stole a wand.
She was probably one of my favorite prospective jurors, I'm not gonna lie, that I saw inside that courtroom. And she was interesting. She was a 30-year-old woman. She had talked about how she could be fair and impartial when it comes to this case. She said as far as the list of people and places, she only knew about 2 celebrities on that list. But she was interesting because she said she had a concert or a conference with unrefundable tickets, but then said she could make it work if she were to be selected as part of this juror. But again, she said she could be fair and impartial. She understands that she can't talk about this case with her sister-in-law, who, by the way, she had said in open court that her sister-in-law is a therapist. She had previous training as a teacher to deal with sexual harassment, something that we saw a lot from these jurors talking about, whether or not their job training actually required them to deal with some levels of sexual harassment, that being a training, that being a course, some type of thing. And then she said she had a friend who was a police officer, but as far as her stealing the wand from Harry Potter World, that was obviously brought up in open court, and she was very honest about it. Honestly, when I heard when the judge asked her, what did you steal? And she said a wand, there was an audible chuckle inside that courtroom. But pretty much, she wasn't convicted of a crime or anything like that. She had to pay a fine. She was prohibited actually from going to Harry Potter World and Universal Studios in Florida for about a year. So by this time, it looks like she can actually go back there again. But she made another interesting comment whenever she was being questioned by the judge, and that she had said that and again, I have to kind of commend some of these jurors for being just very honest and inside that courtroom today. But, when asked about social media posts and if she made posts about the case, she didn't say she made a post about the case in particular, but instead she said she liked to post about the case. Now, she said it was kind of some comedian making a joke about the baby oil, and she was adamant inside that courtroom today that she found it pretty funny, which is, I couldn't see Diddy's face whenever the baby oil or anything like that was mentioned, but he sat there kind of, taking it all in from what I could see from him. He kind of had no reaction from what I saw, but she was pretty adamant that the post that she saw had to do with baby oil and it had to do with Diddy, and she just liked it because, as she says, it was funny. And the judge said that she will proceed as a potential juror in this case.
Yeah, and I saw that there was another juror. By the way, maybe she stole the Elder Wand because it might be excusable, right? It's the most powerful wand in the Harry Potter world. Everybody should know that. But anyway, side note. But I know there was another juror that sued the Port Authority for an injury that hurt their back on an escalator. They ended up settling that. There's also a question about insurance fraud. You had another juror who says that their uncle was charged with raping someone else, another family member. So it's interesting to hear about their past legal connections. But talk to me now about what did the jurors say about their exposure to the case? So other than the fact they might know celebrities or places, talk to me about what they've seen about the case, whether that was documented.
Lord, they be having the most damn commercials. Hold on, y'all. Hey, Vibe Girl.
Your skin isn't the same.
How you doing, baby?
That's why Agency designed Future Firm, a personalized anti-aging.
Whether or not that was evidence that has been released so far in this case. What did we learn about what the jurors' exposure to the Sean Diddy Combs criminal case has been so far?
Yeah, it seemed like it really kind of varied. Some people have seen the documentary, that either being on HBO, The Fall of Diddy, or if they've seen
I think
the
Greg
one
might
on
be
Peacock
gone.
as well too. Not very much mention about BBC or anything like that. But as far as just other mentions of what they have learned about the
I
case,
actually don't know
probably
who in here
beforehand, was just
because
water
we've been
cooler
just
talk.
looking at the
At the
case.
office, one woman said she actually works at HBO, and she was saying that people have chatted about the case. Now she says her job in particular didn't have anything to do with the documentary or anything like that. She was just pretty much a photo producer, so she had no kind of ties into the documentary or anything like that. But it seems like a lot of people were kind of familiar with the case, whether it be them seeing the CNN video, which obviously we'll see in trial, the raw version or whatever they were able to piece together. The government was and showing that in real time, or real speed, I should say. Some people again were familiar with the documentary. Others were familiar just by his arrest. Now, whether or not they knew
she's doing good. She's still in the hospital. Probably gonna go back up there when I get off of work tomorrow.
A lot of people, and I say a lot of
I think
people,
she might gotta stay 2 more days.
Like some people were.
They're not gonna let her go with the pneumonia in her. They want that pneumonia gone.
But for the most
and it's
part,
because of her
there weren't
age.
Too many who said that they couldn't be fair and impartial just because they, for
But other than
example,
that,
saw
just
the
keep her in
CNN video.
prayers, baby.
One prospective juror said that she had empathy,
Thanks
but
for
she said
asking.
that she could also be able to kind of listen to the facts, listen to the evidence, and then some even saying that maybe it doesn't show the entire picture and all of that sort. And so I was actually kind of surprised at how many people were familiar with this case, given that they might have to become prospective jurors now.
And by the way, real quick, Elizabeth, certain jurors, and I'm going to ask you about this, is they were asked about whether or not they were sexually assaulted or harassed, either them or somebody close to them. And talk to me about what you learned of their responses. And also, did they have to provide that information in a separate room for privacy reasons? Because obviously talking about sensitive material like this in front of an entire courtroom of people could be difficult. What safeguards were put in place by the court to ask those questions? And from what you heard, what were some of the responses regarding their experience with sexual assault or harassment of any kind?
So as far as some of those really personal questions, I was honestly surprised at how many were forthcoming about talking about it in open court. The press is inside that courtroom, a bunch of attorneys are inside that courtroom, either for the government or for the defense. There are some family members in there. So I was surprised at how many people were forthcoming about talking about either previous sexual abuse. Some talked about molestation. Others talked about being fondled by somebody who is older than them when they were teenagers. So these very sensitive topics. But then there was one juror who, did take it up at a sidebar. And kind of how that works is the judge will ask the question, have you had any prior experience with sexual abuse? And do you feel comfortable talking about this, or would you prefer to do it in a more private manner? So instead of taking them even outside of the courtroom or even into the judge's chambers or anything like that, what they all did, well, not all of them, it's too many lawyers for all of them to kind of rush up there. But what they did was 2 lawyers from each side. So it's going to be 2 people from the defense, 2 people from the government, the court reporter, the judge, and I think the judge's clerk was in that kind of huddle as well too. And they just kind of spoke honestly and candidly while there's kind of this static going on in the courtroom. But the thing is that Diddy himself can kind of see the live transcript of what is being talked about from this prospective juror. So although we as the press can't hear what they are talking about or what these answers are, Diddy can kind of see a live transcription of it from inside, or not from inside, but from at the defense table, where there's kind of a big computer set up and all the live transcriptions kind of going through that. So he can see the answers. So that kind of took care of the logistical issue, because at first they were talking about kind of sealing the answers, then kind of having it separate, and it would be too much, that it would take up too much time. But it seems like the method at which they're going is working out for both sides. They go up, it doesn't take maybe more than about 2 minutes or so. They come back down. The judge will either keep the juror or dismiss the juror. And in this particular case, this juror who went over to the sidebar, she was dismissed for cause. And so that's kind of how they were able to kind of work around this entire situation. And it seems to be going pretty smoothly from both ends. I don't see too many complaints from either side on how this process is really going.
Let me add a little.
Oh my God, I cannot take all these damn commercials, y'all. I'm so serious. They go that number 7 over there. 2 people done hit that thing. Appreciate it.
Dr. Schwartz Natural Body Wash?
Oh my God, commercial.
What's your wish? It could be anything.
When we at work tomorrow, we're gonna watch it at work.
A bit of legal context to that. So, first of all, I would imagine that Combs has a right to see the transcript, right? Sixth Amendment right, public trial, due process right. So he has the ability to be there during the jury selection process in his own criminal case. It is interesting when we talk about this jury selection process because we're not saying jurors were selected today to officially be on the trial. They've moved, or certain jurors have moved through the first stage of the process. Now, they can be stricken for cause, so a specific reason why they cannot serve on this jury, a legitimate reason. Now, that's different from later on when both sides, generally speaking, the prosecution and the defense, will have the option to put forward preemptory challenges. So both sides are typically granted a certain number of preemptory challenges where they can strike a potential juror without even providing a reason. And that's very advantageous for both the prosecution and the defense. But Elizabeth, moving on from today so far, based on Judge Subramanian, who's the first guard to determine whether or not a juror can be stricken for cause, generally speaking, what did you make of his decision-making today? I mean, did he excuse a lot of jurors? Did he excuse maybe more jurors that were favored by the defense over the prosecution? Because I'll tell you, I know there was one juror, for example, who had apparently been watching the HBO documentary on Diddy. The prosecution was concerned about this juror, and the defense wasn't concerned, but the judge ended up excluding that juror nonetheless. So from what you could see on day one, were there a lot of jurors excused? Did it seem that more of the defense's preferences for jurors were excused, maybe more of the prosecution's? And where are we right now? I mean, do you believe that we're actually going to get a jury seated in a week?
I kind of hold my breath a little bit on whether or not we'll actually seat an entire jury this week, but we'll see. You never know what can happen. I'm still in shock that we're even about to go on trial next week. So, don't take my word for it necessarily. But as far as the judge kind of dismissing jurors or keeping jurors, I was surprised at the amount of jurors that he kind of held on to today. To your point, Jesse, just kind of about this one juror, who had seen the documentary, or even one juror I found interesting. She was the one with the ocular migraine. She says it happens only about a few times a year. She says she needs like about 20 to 30 minutes. And I was kind of surprised that the judge had kept her on because, she was also the one to kind of talk about how a dentist who she had worked under was previously inappropriate with her when she was a teenager and all of that sort, and yet the judge decided to keep her on. And there was one moment that Diddy, I could tell, wasn't too fond of this particular juror. I shouldn't say too fond, but you could tell that he didn't seem like he had necessarily wanted her as a part of the juror, and that was that HBO photo producer. And so she had talked about, she also kind of talked about, her previous history when it came to molestation in her family. It was by a cousin, and it was done to her and her sister. She says she can feel empathy but also be fair and impartial. But she did particularly point out that she called the CNN video disturbing and unsettling to watch. But she said that she could listen to all of the facts, and she was also the one who kind of talked to.
Okay, so you guys, I'm gonna leave off of that because it's not making too much sense. When they interview the jurors, automatically, if they have been a victim of any type of abuse, that a lot of people is really not healed from it, and they're going to put him away, put Sean Puffy Combs away, not by the evidence, not by the stuff that he have done, but by what they have experienced. So you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. So with the type of jurors that they're interviewing, he will be probably going away, allegedly, for the rest of his life. Diddy will probably get only 4 to 8 years because he has no criminal record. That's absolutely true, too. That's true, too. But the jurors that's being picked is people that's healing or hurt or been hurt by the same situation. So I don't even see it being fair, because he don't have no criminal record, but I have a cousin that don't have a criminal record and did 18 years in prison. So we really can't even go by that. But they're finding the most people that have been through the most with the same thing that he's been charged with and putting them on the jury. That's going to put him away. A lot of people will put away somebody, their abuser, because he abused. He's going to basically wear the face of their actual abuser because of his actual abuser. So I don't think this is going to be very interesting. This is my birthday month, so I'm going to try and watch it as much as I can. I need to try to make every dime I can before I go on vacation. So I don't know, y'all. It's just not going to be fair. In my opinion, it's just not going to be fair. In my opinion don't mean nothing. But in my opinion, the way that they are picking the jury, it's not going to look good. It's not looking good. So anyhow, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna try to take me a nap because y'all know I have stayed. Said double tap. Thank you, baby. I appreciate it. But I'm gonna go ahead and leave off. We're gonna come back and see what tomorrow brings with the trial. But I wanted to make sure we get caught up. We haven't missed anything anyway. We can't go inside of the judge, so it's gonna be on this network that we find our information, because they actually get information from a lawyer. On Law and Crime gets information from lawyers and the media. They get emailed every time something go on in the courtroom. So we won't miss nothing. Good evening, everyone. See you tomorrow. Okay, baby, I will see y'all tomorrow as soon as the trial starts. I love y'all, Vibe. I love you, girl. I love you, brother. And Josh and Gina is back, y'all. Gina got a phone. She came in here today. I lost her because when I went live, my mom had called. So, sorry, y'all. I bet y'all sleepy again. My mom had called while I was on the phone, while I had went live, so I lost Gina. But she out here, y'all. She back out here. She has a phone now. But anyhow, okay, see you later. Okay, sister. All right, y'all. I appreciate everybody coming over and checking it out. Have a blessed and beautiful, peaceful, loving day.